Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Ask Apogee Live. This is the show where we answer the most commonly asked questions from our Ask Apogee inbox. And this week we've got a really special treat. I'm joined today by Lucas Vandermee, our Senior Design Engineer, and Sean MacArthur, our Director of Marketing and Industrial Design. And today we're going to be talking about the all-new Element series. And Lucas and Sean can talk a little bit about the design philosophy and kind of the product development story of how these products came to be. So
Right.
super cool treat. And so throughout the show, if you have any questions, please comment below. And if we have time, we'll get around to them and answer some of those. Later on, you can visit our website, apogeedigital.com. If you have any questions, you can click on the Chat with an Apogee Expert or the Ask Apogee button, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. But we'll start with Sean, and I'm really interested. We have a lot of customers asking, what was the design concept? What was the overall concept for the Element series? What was that thought process?
Well, first of all, this feels like an alien abduction with these lights here. It's a very bright environment and set. The concept was to pack the highest audio quality and Thunderbolt performance into the greatest price points. I mean, put very simply. So, we wanted to take our Thunderbolt experience and the recent audio designs and put them in really simple, highly valuable boxes with different configurations and at different price points. And then to also evolve our control experience. So we built an entirely new software for Element, which we've ported over to Symphony now. And then we have our desktop control, which is a phenomenal way to control these things, and Symphony. And we've deepened our integration into Logic, and then we also have our iOS remote.
It sounds like a fantastic concept.
Here's a great analogy. Will you permit me a car analogy? Okay, so when I was 18, 19, I loved the 1985 Mustang, which was like a police car, essentially, but no frills, but just this incredible machine, this V8 with police suspension and steering, and that is Element to me, essentially.
It's a muscle car.
Oh, sorry, yeah, yes, yeah.
So tell us a little about, the Element series is pretty stripped down. So, I mean, Apogee Designs are known for the beautiful OLED displays, the knobs, these sorts of things.
Indeed, yeah. Yes.
And it's a stripped down kind of basic approach aesthetically.
Indeed, and so we really focused our resources and the money on the quality. You cannot get a better quality product at these price points, and Thunderbolt too. These things, when done right, by this engineering team, are premium products, and so we wanted to put it in a really rugged and simple case, but we also had to accommodate a really high-end design on the electronic side.
How many elements were dropped in the back driveway here during the development process?
From a helicopter at 1,000 feet.
1,000 feet drop. Don't try it at home.
I think we parked on one at one point. They're super rugged. I mean, it's a steel, it's a steel case and these very nicely molded aluminum end caps. I don't know how many were dropped, but I can look at that spreadsheet. And
another thing is kind of the portability behind that. Was that something that went into effect when designing these products?
Yeah, I think we could have put these in different shapes and sizes, and we could have extended the 8-channel into a full 1U, but we wanted to really keep that very tight and make it something you could easily put into a backpack and take with you. Of course, they need to be powered. Great audio requires lots of power, but they are very sleek. They're easy to slip into a bag, and they're so easy to set up. I think one of the things that we set out to do when we started this project was, again, to offer the highest quality we could in these form factors and at these prices, but was also to we see people working and we see how much time they spend at their monitors. And there's very little interaction with some of these devices, so it's a bit of a change to the relationship, between you and your audio interface, if I may be so profound. it's a thing you can put on the floor, or stand up on its end as a sort of bookcase style. I think there's less about it that makes you want to put it near your right hand and interact with it. We've built out this incredible control experience in software and with the remote, as I said before. So there's very little reason to touch it. And we saw that as kind of a shift in our thinking and a way to get us to our design objectives, which were ultimate quality, the Thunderbolt performance, and price points that we thought were really appealing to customers. The value, we haven't gotten to this kind of value before for this kind of product.
For sure. And talk a little bit about the software design process. So you're deeply designed not only in the hardware, but also in the UI of the new software. It's a totally new look, new feel. What was that like to design a software user interface from the ground up?
Right. Well, again, it's so flexible. I mean, there's such a range with the software. You can have that full primary window view where you see everything up to 5 mixers for low latency operation. Or you can simplify this down to what we call our essentials strip, and in either scenario, it's really designed to be very simple, very flat, to be very utility, and in the essentials strip configuration to stay out of your way, or to be a sidebar to Logic or your DAW. So the approach was similar. It was to make it very simple, very direct. And make it integrate into workflow, make it really easy for people to be looking at it and not be distracted by it, or have to pay attention to it too much. So that thread of simplicity sort of weaves its way throughout the hardware and throughout the software. And then with the actual control interface, we've never offered that much hardware control or configurability. So if that's something you need, you want to reach for that. You can really, really dial that in to control these things. I think we accomplished a lot in that control ecosystem with all those different ways to interact with this thing. And we're finding that people, though they comment on, wow, this thing doesn't have knobs or buttons or whistles or a cup tray, they really understand the idea of interacting with the software, staying focused on their DAW, staying focused on their work. And so I think, to that extent, we've accomplished a great deal.
Awesome. And the colors are pretty cool too. So we got these orange glowing rings and these kind of bluish teal meters.
Our Miami Dolphins or Howard Johnson's theme.
Howard Johnson's theme.
Yeah.
Is there any inspiration behind it? I mean, because it's a kind of a new look. Most interfaces are modeled to look like analog consoles, but this is kind of a futuristic approach.
Right. Yeah. And I think we're all affected by the things that we see now. Right. We're affected by software that we look at all day, and there's an ongoing effort to simplify these things and to minimize them. So when you interact with them, you're not distracted, you're not confused. So we spend a lot of time, Roger, who is away today, but who was your usual sidekick. Roger defined all of that, and he and I worked together to really optimize it. So and the colors are, again, they're the background of the interface is dark and the tones are very subtle, from a channel strip to a background or a sidebar or the essentials bar, and then the colors are minimal. There's really only 3 or 4 colors and variations of those colors in the interface, because we see this as a utility to control the device. And again, your primary window is your DAW, and that's where your attention is. So we want it to be to stay out of your way, but to provide whatever sort of scale of functionality you want.
It looks pretty awesome. So you did a beautiful job.
Well, it's a huge team effort.
Anyone who hasn't checked out the new Element Control software, head over to our website and you can just see some screenshots. It looks like something out of a spaceship. So I don't know. I feel like it's the future of.
Thank you very much. And
it does look like.
Yeah.
It looks like the future, and it sounds like the future too. Yeah. So. Lucas, you're responsible for the converter design, the mic preamp design, that sort of part of the interface, kind of the soul of the sound of the product. Tell us a little bit about what's new in the Element series, and how is that different from other Apogee products? What's new in the Elements?
Well, I mean, designs are always I would say more evolutionary than revolutionary. I mean, that would be great to be revolutionary, but that's. But the Element series is, I would say, the latest revision of a type of circuitry that we started with symphony, duet, ensemble, and with every next unit, with every next development, you get new ideas, things that you can do differently. Sometimes, there's also simple things as your budget is limited, so you need to leave certain things out. In symphony, of course, I can put a lot more circuitry than I can do in a unit like this. So evolutionary is, I would say, the word. Then what is new about Element is that we're having a new line of A to D converters for the first time in our product. It's an AKM converter, and it's a very high performer. So that was nice to put that in there. And of course, with every new converter comes new circuitry because they all behave different. So that's pretty much what's really new about Element.
And comparing elements, and you've been involved in Apogee designs for the past 15 years or so, at least.
17, 18, something like that. Yeah.
And so as far as performance on these units, how does this compare to maybe designs that you worked on 10 years ago and that sort of thing? How does it compare to the stuff in the past?
Well, we definitely made some headway there. It's amazing. It's amazing how much better converters in general are nowadays compared to like 10, 15 years ago. And the performance that the Element, for instance, gives you that would be unheard of, 10 years ago. I mean, those ratings, those readings that you get with it is just wasn't possible in those days. Yeah.
So, I mean, these types of interfaces that we can have for less than $1,500 US compare to or exceed a mastering grade converter from 10, 15 years ago, something like a...
Oh, yeah, easily, yeah.
So, pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah, there has been, there's been a lot of improvement in components. Of course, the general knowledge about how to design a proper converter has grown over time, and my own experience, of course, you learn tricks, and every time you have another new one that you put in there, and that's how it works. Yeah.
And so tell us a little bit about the mic preamp design, because there's the mic preamp concept that's in Elements and Duet and some of our other products is different than a lot of other audio interfaces on the market. Tell us a little bit about that design and what separates it from a normal interface.
Sure. Well, and of course, the first difference with a lot of interfaces is that our preamps are digitally controlled. Element specifically doesn't even have any controls like mechanical controls on the front, so it has to be a digital controlled preamp. And what a lot of the competitors use to design a digital mic pre, there's basically a chip on the market that you can put in there, and you address the pins right, and you put audio in, and audio comes out, and there's your mic pre. That's all fine, and they perform okay, but that's not what we do. I like to design my own preamp with my own circuitry, and just to get better results. So we do not use the one-chip solution. We have a more complicated solution. The other thing is that we have a technique of adjusting the gain settings in a less conventional way. Basically, the preamp reconfigures itself while dependent of the amount of gain that you need, and that happens all seamless. You as a user, you don't even notice that. You just dial in and dial out. That's, for instance, why we don't have a pad. you don't need to select a pad because we all take care of that if there's attenuation needed. And so you have for the user, it's a completely seamless process. You're dialing from 0 to 75, but internally, the configuration of the preamp changes dependent of the amount of gain required or attenuation required. So
it's pretty amazing. That's incredible. And what specifications do you use when you're in your office in the lab, kind of designing these circuits? How do you know that you've improved your design, or how do you know that what you've got is better than the one before? What do you use to measure that?
Well, I mean, there's of course there's the objective and there's the subjective, right? And the objectives are the hard numbers, and hard numbers are things like a THD plus noise, which basically means distortion plus noise component, or intermodulation distortion, which is the distortion between two tones. You look at things like the noise floor, where's the noise floor, dynamic range, which is the difference between the loudest level and your noise floor. And those are all verifiable numbers. So those are numbers you can repeat. So that gives you an objective way of comparing a design you make compared to something you designed before. So that's one part, and that's the hard work, And then there's the call it the creative side, where you start listening to it, and do you like what it sounds like? Because there's no there's no perfect world. There's always, you have to make as with any design, you have to make compromises to get to your price point and to get a certain quality. And in that process, there's also such a thing as what you prefer sound-wise. And so listening is also a big part of designs. Like, so what does it sound like? Does it have the characteristics that I think are important for a good audio design?
Yeah. And this is always difficult. People say that like talking or writing about music is like dancing about architecture. Whenever we use these words to describe sound, it's always very abstract, like fat or thick or smooth, all of these sorts of things that you can use to, I don't know, describe food or something. But what sort of sound, when you're listening back to a design, what are you going for? What adjectives do you want to kind of aspire towards?
Right. Well, I mean, of course, there's you want transparency. There's no doubt about that. You want a very tight bottom end. We like tight bottom ends, and we want a we like punch. That's another thing. We like punch. Yeah, but this punch is so important. Especially in the old days of converters, I mean, things have gotten so much better, like I said before, but in the old days, if you would listen to an average converter, you would listen to a snare coming through after conversion, the snare would sound like it had no bottom at all. The punch is gone. And because that lower mid-range of a snare, that gives it energy, that needs to come through perfectly. And so that's one of the things I really listen for, like, do we have it? Do we have that?
So, tight bottoms and punch.
Right.
And transparency.
Transparency.
That's it. Yeah. So I've got kind of one more question that takes us into the headphone amp design. So this is something that's really new. No one else really does headphone amp design the way that has been implemented in these new products. So Element shares the design similar to Groove and similar to the new Symphony IO Mark II. We call it constant current drive. Can you talk a little bit about that design process and what makes that circuit different than other interfaces and why it's different even than previous Apogee interfaces?
Yeah, I mean, our previous interfaces had a more conventional design for the headphone amps. They were nice headphone amps, absolutely. But like I said, there's evolution in electronics, and so with headphone 2, there's especially the last few years, there's a very strong push towards zero impedance out headphone amps, and there's definitely an advantage to that. But I got intrigued with a different philosophy, which is a current drive amp, which is a difficult concept to explain. You really have to understand electronics a bit to get what that is. And the funny thing, even a lot of engineers get confused by it, because dealing with current is difficult to visualize, while dealing with voltages is a lot easier. So when I developed Groove, I was just thinking about, like, well, am I going to design another zero impedance output headphone amp, or why don't I explore that current drive a bit more? And because the current drive is not easy to implement either, and Groove basically is the result of that, and I was actually surprised how well it worked, and how amazingly effective it has on a lot of headphones. It works especially well with like lower impedance headphones. I'm talking not the real low ones, but I'm talking like, the ones that are at 50 ohm, like
studio headphones.
Yeah, and the more difficult they are in their own impedance behavior, the better the circuit can correct it. So the impact is even bigger on those type of headphones than on, like, for instance, high impedance headphones, which tend to be more flat in general. So it will sound good too, but the difference with other headphone amps is less dramatic than it is with headphones that are actually not that great impedance-wise. So it's an interesting circuit.
And I remember when you first kind of showed me this circuit, when we first plugged it in, I was sitting at the desk over here on the other side of the building, and we had a pair of Sony 7506 headphones, a studio classic that I listen to a lot, and I'm sure probably a lot of you guys have as well. And I remember plugging this in and hearing this kind of this warmth, maybe that tight bottom. There was a little tight,
super tight bottom.
there was this bottom end on it that I hadn't heard when listening to 7506s before.
Yeah.
So
no, it's that 7506 is that was probably the second headphone I plugged in, and that's when my mouth fell open. Like, wow. This is really amazing what it does, So it makes they're okay headphones, but it makes it really, really good.
So we have James Parrish says that, is the Element considered an upgrade from Duet Quartet?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's an improvement of, like, the specs that you said: dynamic range, total harmonic distortion.
Yeah. It's especially on the AD side, you'll see better performance.
Yeah. That being said, Duet is such an awesome product, and the user interface is beautiful. It's bus powered. These guys do, you have to plug them into power in the wall, because they've got those fantastic pre's and that great sound quality. But Duet is cool because it's got that bus power function.
Right.
So,
yep.
But the Element series is an evolution.
It's another step up. Yep.
Awesome. Fantastic. We have somebody saying hello from Audio Systems Australia.
Hi there.
Good. Hey.
G'day.
And awesome. So we have a question here about rugged kind of sound quality in the live format. He's asking if we'll build a product in the future, which we keep things pretty secret here in the future. But he said the same rugged build quality for live use. I mean, I think that, Sean, is that something that when we were looking at the mechanical design, that you would use this design as a live performance piece as well?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. You certainly could, and because it doesn't really have anything on it you would interact with, it's ideal for to be in a rack somewhere out of reach, for sure. And the A channel does come with rack ears, so those are things we think about and talk about.
Yeah,
indeed.
And for things like the speaker connectors on the back are XLR,
right,
which is that much more secure when you're in a live setting. And I know a lot of people using laptops in live production now with Ableton Live or Logic and MainStage. And if you can just plug into that XLR, send that feed into the front of house.
And the latency performance is incredible too. We know that a lot of people are using Symphony Thunderbolts for live performance. So yeah, it's really an ideal unit for that. And certainly you could see where that could extend.
For sure,
Yeah.
for sure. So anyone who's got a really cool thing that you're doing in the box in the studio, maybe in Logic or MainStage or Live or any of those DAWs that are optimized for that, you want to bring that sort of studio sound to the stage, you can definitely kind of plug in elements, plug them into the front of house, and take that same sound you had in the studio up on stage.
Right.
Well, thank you guys so much. I know you're both incredibly busy, and Sean and Lucas, we appreciate your time. And if any of you guys out there have more questions, we'll welcome you back to either our Facebook feed here or our website, apogeedigital.com. And thank you guys so much
Thanks,
for tuning
everybody.
in.
Thank you.
Beam me up.